my name is Francisca Da Silveira, and the name of my play is Can I Touch It? Can I Touch It is about a Black female entrepreneur in Boston who has to make an impossible decision: fight for the livelihood of her family or fight for the livelihood of her community. I wrote it as my second semester project in grad school. In Boston, there was an initiative to change the name of a really big transportation center area of Roxbury called Dudley Square, originally named after Thomas Dudley, who was a governor of Massachusetts in 16 something. Basically, they wanted to change it to be something that was more reflective of the people that actually lived in the area. Roxbury is predominantly Black. It's an area that is very near and dear to me because I grew up around there. I used it very frequently to take the bus. My mom and I would take the bus to go to all of her appointments. And so it is a place that I knew very well. And they decided to change the name of the square from Dudley Square to Nubian Square. And that was sort of in the news, and everyone was talking about it on social media. So I was getting my news that way, that it had finally happened, because it was an initiative that community members had been fighting for over 5 years. So I started thinking about some good times and some not good times being in that area, mostly involved around me waiting for the bus, the number 15 bus specifically, for a very long time. Lots of delays with that. And then also thinking about how much that area had changed since I was going to these appointments with my mom growing up. The Boston Public School building, the official building, moved to that area. A lot of different cafes started popping up. But just thinking about all of these changes that were happening there and how it was just so different than the Dudley or Nubian Square that I had grown up with, and the sort of conflicting feelings of that experience. I wanted to explore those questions in a play. Also, thinking about the stores that I used to go to with my mom, a really specific one was a beauty supply store there. And that brought me on a huge tangent of how all of these African beauty stores basically look and smell and sound the same and have the same kinds of textures. Thinking about the questions that I would get asked as a Black woman and as someone who started wearing her hair naturally. They are pretty similar questions to when you're thinking about gentrification. And so I decided to marry those two ideas, exploring these questions and relating them to gentrification and also to hair. There's way more theatricality in that. And who is this play for? I mean, this play is for the residents of Roxbury and Dorchester and of Boston in general, which has seen a lot of gentrification happen in the last 10 years. People in cities that are also experiencing the same thing. It's for millennials who I think are really grappling with this idea of liking having nice things in their area, but then also thinking about the question of what are the sacrifices that you have to make. And it's also for Black women who are hopefully going to really identify and laugh and shake their heads and make sounds of understanding while they're watching this, and are hearing the questions that get asked in terms of how people are seeing them and how people are seeing literally physically the way that they look and what is on their head, and the curiosity around that. Yeah. I love that question, especially in a profession when you are very much working on usually on one or two things, but it's really nice to like reflect holistically on like, what do I want to say with all of the things that I do? I think that my body of work has definitely changed, or the way that I think about the plays that I write. I do want them or intend them to be socially conscious, and to not only really speak to like the individual moment that it is written in, but also to have it be something that can live on, because it's talking about people who are the product of their time and their environment, for better and for worse. One of the plays that I am really proud of and always excited to talk about is called Not for Profit, or the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion play. That is about an education nonprofit in Boston, a staff who has to grapple with an outside white male consultant coming in. And I wrote that play after working at many nonprofits in Boston and reflecting on the systems on which those are built. Even though all of these different places that I worked at focused on different things, the internal problems that each of them had were really similar. Junior staff being much younger, and also where a lot of the of color staff members were, and how the turnaround rate for those positions were really high. Myself thinking like, why are all of these young people of color leaving these positions? Like, what is the environment that's being created? A lot of these nonprofits have really admirable missions and are doing really wonderful work, but the people who are doing the on the ground work are not necessarily the people that are the decision makers. Yeah, that's a play that I really love. There are like surreal and absurd moments in it, which is something that I like to explore with all of my plays. There are elements that are like just a little bit quirky or just a little bit skewed, to let you know that this world is not exactly as it seems. I like finding those places to be really playful in my plays, and to play with form, but also have those elements be functional and have them relate to the themes and the questions that I'm asking. A play that I'm working on right now is called The Merry Wives of Geneva. It is about my great, I think there might be another great in there, grandfather and his 7 wives. So I was born in Cape Verde, which is a group of 10 islands off the west coast of Africa. My great, maybe another great grandfather was a Frenchman who traveled to the island and basically populated it. We don't see him in the play, but it is about the 7 women who were technically married to him, and about their relationship mostly with one another, but also their relationship to him. It's also about colorism. He chose each of these women to be a la Francaise, which basically means as close to white as possible. Something that I don't think we talk about enough. Just thinking about the repercussions of the African diaspora. Ultimately, it's about their empowerment. It's about how they use sex to their advantage, and rise above the situation that they have found themselves in. I am also a dramaturg. Specifically, I like to call myself a playwright dramaturg. My passion is working with specifically younger playwrights or emerging playwrights. And my priority in that relationship is not necessarily developing the play or whatever piece that they are working on. It's more so in developing the playwright, thinking about artistic mission and artistic voice, and strengthening that artistic voice. Thinking about what it means to be a playwright in the here and now, but also what it means to be a playwright that lives on. Specifically in terms of working with playwrights of color, that's something that's really important to me, is thinking about the canon and how we can start thinking about ourselves as being part of the canon in the future, and it will influence how bold writers are in their plays. I find how playful they are, how intentional they are. All of that really involves is getting to know somebody and asking them questions about who they are and what they want to do and how they want to do it, and then moving forward to actually come up with ideas about how to make all of that happen. Nostalgic, inspired, activated, rooted, introspective, impassioned, and a little bit angry. The call to action for this play is basically to try and be more informed about what is happening in your community, especially as places are changing so quickly and everything feels very quick and precarious. There are so many times where when I'm back in Boston and I'm driving past some place that was familiar to me and I see signs of banks or of different corporations that have bought a piece of land, and knowing that, you know, some kind of condo or some kind of something is going to appear there in a year or 2 years, but actually challenging myself to find out what exactly is happening, and are there any conversations or meetings that I or other community members can be a part of to actually have a voice in the decision making process, because it may not be a situation in which, you know, the community can shut it down, but you can either like definitely make a statement or you can try and get some kind of like influence in that situation. You know, we do talk a lot about gentrification in the abstract, but being informed about the small actions that that build to that abstract, and and make it very real. It does feel like it's happened overnight, and the reality is that it has not happened overnight. So the call to action is to be invested and to be informed and to also be generous with yourself. I think this is something that I've had to say to myself a lot going back home to Boston, going to Dorchester and Roxbury, being generous in the sense of it's okay to like the nice things that are coming sometimes, the convenience, but also recognize that the sacrifices that have had to be made by, again, people that are in the abstract. So just being generous with the duality of that.